going into 2019 dance. Oh, hey. Hi, guys. How are you? Welcome. It is 2019. We're starting off the first series of interviews of the year with Scott Bartlett. It's season 4. If you guys weren't paying attention or counting, it's episode 2. I am here with Chuck Manley,
Hello.
Steve Bollier. I am Josh Hazen. We're talking with Scott Bartlett, the author of the brand new series After the Galaxy. Great military science fiction this guy writes. And we're going to delve into a lot of his books and process tonight. I'm really excited to have a guest back on the show. We ran for like a month without any guests, maybe even longer than that.
So you're basically saying you're sick of our shit. Is that
well, I mean that's just like a baseline.
The last guest we had on a Monday night, I feel like, was David Weber, and that would have been like early December.
Yeah. I'm glad you guys left a month between me and David Weber. That'd be a tough act to follow.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure though that show is still going.
It's somewhere in an alternate universe.
You've got a lot of shoes to step into. So welcome back, Scott. Thanks for taking some time out of your schedule to hang out with us, man. It's always good to talk to you.
Always great to be here.
So I think we had you on back in season 2, if I remember correctly. It's been a while since we've had you on the show, actually on an interview.
I was on a couple of times, pretty much back to back.
Yeah, because didn't we do one that was an interview and then one that was like we were talking about something around craft? I think we had you on a Thursday night, I think.
Yeah, slinging print books in person. I remember.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's right, because that's how you didn't get started in ebooks. You got started in paperback.
I may be the only indie who did that, but yeah.
That's crazy. You think about doing that now, and like, how many paperbacks do you sell this year? Oh, like 4. And Scott made his living on it when he first started.
I recommend doing what I did to approximately no one.
Well, since it's been a while since we've had you on the show, we've garnered 1 or 2 more viewers since then. Would you do us a favor, introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about how you got started in writing?
Sure. So I've been writing since I was 15 years old. I wrote like 3 chapters or something, then got distracted, probably by a video game. I did start with science fiction, but the one that I completed was sci-fi, and that one is now in a deep, dark place where no one goes, and I keep it under lock and key. It's never going to leave. It's never going to escape. But I finished it. That's the main thing. Then the first thing I published was Royal Flush, a medieval comedy novel, randomly enough. Then I did a contemporary novel, and it was straight back into sci-fi, and I haven't left since. So I feel like I found my home.
How did that? I mean,
hold on.
medieval comedy. Like, I'm really curious. Like, how did that go over?
Scott, we spent some time with you in Vegas, and I can't picture you writing a medieval comedy.
Yeah,
it happened. When you say medieval comedy, do you mean like a medieval fantasy comedy, like Robert Aspirin or something like that, or just like medieval but funny, like a historical funny novel?
Well, I wrote it when I was like 19 and knew absolutely nothing about the world. So when you think about it, it makes perfect sense that I would write this as an early book, because I just made up my own fantastical land where nothing made sense. And the main character was named the King, and I just kind of went from there.
So it's kind of like all of Josh's books. Awesome. Cool.
Every week I say this, and you'd think that I would.
Who invited this guy?
Say, who invited this guy onto the show? Well, you made this the logical jump to military sci-fi from medieval comedy, which it's a straight line.
It's right there.
Everyone does, right?
You miss it.
So tell us about, like, I mean, obviously we don't know you for your medieval comedy. So
it's like Monty Python's Holy Grail straight to Starship Troopers.
Right. So first of all, how did you make that jump and do it successfully? But then what brought you into that genre and kept you there?
Chris Fox.
Yeah. It's a good answer. It's a good answer.
I tried like various flavors of sci-fi before. Dystopian satire is another random pairing that I tried. Dystopian cyberpunk.
So the popular genres. You really went for popular.
Exactly. Yeah. The first one, the one that like stayed in the dark cave, was sort of post-apocalyptic sci-fi, I guess. And the recent one, After the Galaxy, is another crazy mashup. But after reading Chris Fox's Right to Market, I was like, well, I write sci-fi already, and I love sci-fi. And I feel like in this genre, I can do all this crazy sci-fi stuff while pairing it with a genre that, you know, has a readership that's hungry for it. So, and I get to learn more about, you know, the military, and still get to learn about like quantum physics and alien biology and stuff. That's a very rich topic. I get to make that one up too.
So do you go on like Wikipedia to find out about alien biology and anatomy and all that?
I don't think there's a Wikipedia for that yet, although there probably is now that I say it. It's probably pretty much anything you could name is somewhere on the internet. I do go down some random Google holes during my research for sure.
So your first series, was it the Exon Prophecies? I'm probably murdering that name.
Yeah, I don't really care how people pronounce it. I pronounce it Ixon, but I've had the experience where I've read an author's book and pronounced a character name a certain way, and then the author tells me it's wrong, and then it just like totally throws the experience for me. But
you're wrong.
That was part of a 10 books like sort of series or cycle, which I kind of just call my Ixon stuff. Ixon Prophecies, Mech Wars, Ixon Legacy, and I'm going to be co-authoring some stuff with Joshua James in this year. In the same.
Very cool.
Yeah.
You know, co-authoring and collaborations was one of the things I thought was really going to take off this year, and it does seem like a lot of people are looking into doing certain things like that, and doing it in a well-established universe. Like, I mean, obviously your stuff is that something that have you already like reached out to your readers and asked, like, are these stories that you guys want to read, or are you just banking on that's what they want to read? Like, how do you, a lot of people could jump into collaboration. They're like, oh, we could just write a whole bunch of books real quick and make some money. But a lot of people do some really put some deep thought into what they're doing. How did you guys come up with working together on that?
I've definitely had a certain threshold of like reviews and messages saying, we want more Captain Husher. So that's what we're going to give them. A bit unusual for mine is it's going to be surrounding the main character. I feel like that's not always done. Usually it's side stories and offshoots and stuff from the main world. But we're going to be collaborating on a book about the main character, which is what a lot of readers have been asking for. And sort of a few years down the road after where Ixon Legacy ends, it's going to pick up from there and see the situation and, you know, how the poop is hitting the fan at that point.
Right.
I don't know if I can say poop.
I don't care what you say. I just want to point out that he had the Link level up sound on his phone that just went off.
Message.
Nice.
Legend of Zelda.
What's that? I'm kidding. Come on.
Get out.
You really, like, you make me itch. Like, I got like first it was Locutus and then it was Link, and you're like, you're not getting any of my references.
Oh, that's funny.
I feel like Clint Eastwood's character in Gran Torino, and he's like, "Get off my show," but I can't do it. It's a horrible Clint. My voice is just.
Don't worry, we'll take that out in post editing. Yeah, we'll just remove that all together.
Yeah, edit that.
Yeah, we'll edit that.
We'll have to put in a clip from the movie.
Yeah, just put Clint Eastwood's face over my face, and then hit play. So let's talk about After the Galaxy. It's you've released 3 books in the series so far, and you've been doing kind of a rapid release on it. So tell us a little bit about the series, the inspiration behind it, and then kind of we'll go into a little more detail as we go through.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so like I said, it's a crazy blend of a bunch of genres: post-apocalyptic, cyberpunk, a little bit of Western, space opera, military sci-fi. You know, you name it, it's in there. The kitchen sink, which is a little riskier from a marketing perspective, but the readers who have read it seem to like it. The general premise is it's many hundreds of years in the future. The post-apocalyptic part comes from there was sort of this economic collapse a few hundred years ago, and everyone decided that the best route, instead of dying of starvation or whatever, was to upload into this sort of matrix-like digital simulation and live there. So the vast majority of humanity has uploaded to simulation, which is called the subverse in the series. And it's the main character's job to go around the galaxy and protect the infrastructure that enables the subverse. So he's protecting it from pirates and raiders, and there are also small colonies of biological humans living here and there, and they're kind of just up poop creek in terms of protection, because no one really cares about them anymore. So it's also kind of, it falls to him to step in if they have trouble, and often they're living around this infrastructure, so that works out all right.
And is this in the same? This is a completely different universe than from your Excellent Prophecies, right?
Yeah, and the next thing is going to be a totally different universe. The thing I'm not co-authoring.
So I had the joy of formatting that series for you,
and doing the typography.
And doing the typography. Let me encourage every reader out there. Like, if you want to see one of the weirdest formatted books ever, pick up this series. Now, that's not a bad thing. It was weird, though. It's such a cool concept. I didn't read it yet, but I want to read it just so I can understand I talked to you a little bit about this, but like your chapter breakdown. You've got like parts broken down into like 8 chapters within the parts. Is that about right?
Yeah. So with this one, it really is like an epic quest sort of deal. I really wanted to do the hero's journey. So he's starting on the periphery of the galaxy called the Brink, and he's from a brink town. So these are kind of like these interchangeable small colonies where people are trying to scrape up a living, working at the jobs that robots haven't taken. He starts from there, and that's book 1, and he's solving a problem there. And then he moves into the mid systems and then into the core in book 3. And along the way, I wanted it very like setting based. So he's jumping along different settings. So each part tends to sort of revolve around a setting and has a mini conflict. It's sort of episodic. I tried not to make it too episodic. Each one feeds into the next, but that's where that came from. The structure is very informed by the setting.
My favorite part of writing a book is naming things. I don't know. Does that make me weird? But I want to write new books just so I can name new things.
That's not what makes you weird, Steve.
No.
Okay, cool. There's so many other things. But Scott, when I was skimming through and all of that, man, I thought some of your names for cities and things were some of the most creative, and really they made me want to read it. There was was it Lambton Cloud? Or there was something Cloud, right?
Lambton Cloud, yep, you got it.
I loved that so much, like I wanted to steal it. Be like, from me. Good stuff, man. Really great stuff. I'm excited to jump into that at the end of the series.
Thank you. I got a question for you. When you name something, do you like go deep and like try to like research the names or the meanings behind names and stuff? Or is it like more stuff that sounds cool? Does it fit the character?
Well, I'll tell you, one of my favorite things to do is to name guys after girls. Main character in one of my series, his name is Whitney. And right. And I like doing things that make people stop a little bit, not like crazy, but like stop a little bit And when I saw the Cloud name in yours, it made me go to several things. Cloud Atlas, made me go to Final Fantasy, made me go just several places that were all really good thoughts for me. And so like it made that an interesting, made me want to read it. And so for me, I name things like, I try not to take anything, because I'm writing fantasy, I try not to take anything from like our world to confuse people too much. But
Sure.
you know, I go a lot off of like what sounds good and what works for the world. And I just thought all of yours worked so well for the world. You had Ares, you had Lambton Cloud, you had Brinktown. Brinktown is such a cool name. So anyway, I'm kissing your butt right now. I love it.
I like your technique too. I may have to steal that.
Do it.
I like coming up with names that give that kind of, I don't even know, like you like in Game of Thrones, where you have like the twins and like Casterly, like that. I think the epic where you hear the name and you're like, oh yeah, that's, I want to go there. Like Tashi Station, like I want to go to Tashi Station and hang out like that. Those epic names that you remember that aren't just like Bob's Burger Shack down on the corner.
One of my favorite things to do right now is to name things something really weird just to hear Luke Daniels have to say it.
So when you go into starting this new universe, I'm curious about your world building. Is it hard to set aside what you have on all the other series and start fresh like this to do a big sweeping series like this?
Not really. I would say that's one of the most appealing parts of it for me, kind of departing from what I've already done and building out something crazy and trying to bring something new to the table with the genre, while still staying true to the tropes that readers love.
What's one of what was one of the more difficult things about writing this series that you didn't see coming? So like, hey, I'll write a new series. Everybody gets those like really great ideas about, hey, I want to write these new series. Did you have any of those moments where it was like a hard hurdle that you had to get over writing this book compared to your other books?
One of the biggest challenges was integrating the subverse of the digital world with the real world. And not only that, but making what happened in the subverse matter. Because, I mean, ultimately it is just a digital space, and yes, it's real humans there, but it can be hard for us meat space creatures to really invest in that. So one thing I did was I made the crew of his ship all digital. And he's a troubleshooter, is what he's called, sort of like the special forces of the Galactic Guard, which is the military organization that he's a part of. And so every troubleshooter has a digital crew of 4. It's basically a bridge crew, and that's it. Everything else is automated through the ship. And I also have him enter the subverse so that the stakes that are attached to the main character follow him into the subverse, and things happen there. And I also have, without giving too much away, the subverse starts to influence the real world in a very real way.
And so it's much more than just kind of an internet type relaxing alternate world. It actually has specific ramifications in the real world.
Exactly.
So that's interesting, because Steve and I were talking about a book concept a couple of weeks ago where we were kind of visualizing different ways to do kind of what you're saying, but have like the real world in close to present day, but then you have like say a video game world or an alternate world that where the currency and everything matters in that game, but it can also be used in the real world, kind of like in present day where you can buy like World of Warcraft, you can buy like game time for real money, but you can sell it in game for gold. Or you used to be able to buy WoW gold for real money, and people would make real businesses off of farming gold and say, and selling that gold. Is that kind of like the same concept you're going for here, or is it something more actual, like more concrete than that?
Well, there is an interchangeable currency, and it's kind of different. Where most biological humans have either like failed to reproduce or like died centuries ago and now just exist in digital form. Most of the things that actually matter to society happen in the digital space. And the real world is sort of just it really is like the infrastructure, the support system to hold up this digital world. So, yeah, they have a shared currency. When it comes to currencies, I've often wondered what a reputational currency would be like. I think they're trying something like that in China. It's definitely been tested out in science fiction, but something that's both interesting and pretty scary too.
Oh yeah,
Because
yeah, for sure.
You know, look back on some of our greatest innovators of history, and a lot of them were hated in their day, and a lot of them were outcasts or whatever. So a reputational currency, I don't know, definitely has its pitfalls.
I mean, everyone would hate me. I'd be poor. Like no money ever.
Well, but I mean, it's true. You hit on the right influencer, and you're like, "Hey, go vote down this person," and you have suddenly 100,000 people voting you down for no other reason than somebody said, "Go vote you down." Like,
Right.
It's a very
well, it's like my how you can easily sabotage another author. Didn't I share that in the collective? We won't say it here,
right?
And we won't do it ever. But yeah, I mean, if how you make your money is based upon your reputation, that's crazy, man. That's something I don't want to be involved in.
Yeah,
what's interesting, I think.
Go ahead.
I was going to say what's interesting about your concept is that in most lit RPGs and then most alternate like Portal kind of type books like this, the real world is the main world. But it sounds like what you're saying is that the digital world is what's actually more important.
Yeah. So the way it came about was the economic collapse or whatever was caused by automation and robots taking over people's jobs. So the way it started was it was a way for people without jobs and who weren't contributing to society to have something to do and sort of build a space beyond the real world. And then gradually, as humanity imported to this world, and as you know, famine swept the stars, and humanity kind of checked out of the real world, it became more and more important. So.
Is your prologue like year 2020, location McDonald's? A man walks in and uses the kiosk and realizes that all the jobs have been taken over by robots. Is it kind of like that? I mean, is that how it starts?
The unwritten prologue, but it actually starts on Earth. That definitely happened at some point in my world's history. But the first chapter starts on Earth. It's a post-apocalyptic Earth. Basically barren, crumbling cities, and the main character finds this pirate who's impersonating another guardsman, and it goes from there.
And you have 3 books out now, and obviously you've been doing the rapid release. How many books do you have planned for the series?
It could go to 6, depending on reader demand and what I feel like writing, I guess. Right now, I've moved on to another universe, so I may at some point return to this and drop another trilogy. So I would say at least 6. It could go to, but there is a fairly definitive ending at the end of book 3, and I could just leave it there.
Very cool. Let's take a break real quick and do our show sponsor this week. Steve's got the duty.
The duty.
Duty.
Well, we have Kacey Ezell's Minds of Men, the Psyche of War, book 1. First of all, I have to comment on the cover because it's so unique. If you haven't seen it, it's like this old, just pull it up, but it's kind of like this old, like 1930s, 1940s.
Yep.
Yeah. Really cool pin-up on an airplane, and I've seen this book around, and just the cover alone has made me want to pick it up. But it was a 2018 Dragon Award finalist for the best alternate history novel, and it's here's the description. It's Evelyn Adamsen. Evelyn Adamsen grew up knowing she had to hide her physical abilities, lest she be labeled as a witch. I like that already. However, when the U.S. Army Air Corps came calling in 1943, looking for psychic women to help their beleaguered bombing force, Evelyn answered, hoping to use her powers to integrate the bomber crews and save American lives. She was extremely successful at it until her aircraft got shot down. Now Evelyn is on the run in occupied Europe with a special unit of German Fallschirmjager. Practice that, man. I practiced that word. Fallschirmjager. I think I'm saying that right. Fallschirmjager.
Pour me some Jaeger.
Yeah, man. Go buy the book just so you have to say that over and over again in your head. German Fallschirmjager and an enemy psychic on her heels. Worse, Evelyn learns that using her psychic powers functions as a strobe that highlights her to the enemy. As the enemy psychic closes in, Evelyn is faced with a dilemma in her struggle to escape. How can she make it back to England when the only talent she has will expose her if she uses it? It's cool, man. It kind of reminds me of like an Agent Carter style book. I don't know if anybody cared about that TV show, but I sure did. I thought it was great. And then it got canned.
That was an advanced level ad read too.
It was what?
An advanced level ad read with that pronunciation.
Fallschirmjager.
Yeah. I'm really glad you did that, and not me. Except it's Army Air Corps, not Corpse.
What did I say?
Corpse.
Oh, you know, I just read it. Yeah, okay, fine. I'm going to say corpse from now on because that's dead people, and I like dead people.
That is the show sponsor for this week. The link is in the live chat. Please go and pick it up if you have not read it before. Kacey is a huge fan of the show. She's a friend of the show as well. She'll be on with Larry Correa in April. And actually she'll be on next week, I think, with Chris Kennedy talking about anthologies. So she's already she'll be on 2 times this season, and we're not even halfway through yet because she's such a great author to talk to, and she's got a lot of things to say. Very fantastic writer, and also a pilot. And so that's one of the things that intrigues me about this book is you know, you're talking about World War II, which is one of my favorite conflicts, but the time period too. But I'm really interested to see her piloting prowess come off on this book. And a lot of people, you know, they write what you know, and they mess up certain things, and I'm really interested to see kind of the carryover to this book from her daily military life. And she just got promoted too, which is cool. So congratulations. But speaking about what we know, I know we talked about process and that the last time you were on, but I know you're part of our collective now, talking every day about word counts and different things. So we like to really kind of get down to the nitty gritty on the second half of the show and talk to authors about how they go about actually drafting and creating. So can you give us kind of a little insight into how your daily process works for while you're drafting?
For sure. So I've actually started now with the blurb or the product description that'll go on Amazon. You guys know the snowflake method.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of I guess it's my adaptation of that. But I find that, I mean, not only is it good to write the blurb up front and like start thinking of that in the way that you're going to message it to readers going forward and get people interested in it, but I find it's also a pretty cool like little microcosm for your story, and helps you stay clear on, you know, what the story problem is, who the main character is, who the main focus is, what the thrust is going forward. So it's kind of 2 birds with 1 stone.
As sexy as thrust is, I have to ask this question. What is the snowflake method? We're going to help everybody that is as stupid as I am.
So the snowflake.
I say like Army Air Corps. So like you gotta get dumb with me.
Somebody grab your crayons. We got to explain something to Steve.
I may not remember, right? But the snowflake method is like you write one sentence and then you write 4 or 5 sentences describing like the main major steps of the book. And then you expand each sentence into a paragraph. Maybe it's 4, I don't know. They become your 4 acts or something. And then you get all the way to a chapter outline and then you write the chapters. So it's like a snowflake crystallizes from the center outward. So does your book.
So it has nothing to do with not offending easily offended people. Okay, got it.
Right.
No, but really, I had no idea what the snowflake method was. So that's cool. That's good to know.
Yeah. So it's sort of like that, but I take the blurb and then expand that into sort of, well, that's my premise and also my main character and the story problem and stuff. So then sometimes I'll write out things like theme or character flaws, minor and major characters. What secrets might the characters be holding that can sort of become twists later on in the story? And after I do that sort of bare bones outline, I'll do a chapter by chapter outline. And that's, I got an outline here. So that each chapter is a little cue card. I try to limit myself to one side. Sometimes it spills over onto the other side, as you can see. But each chapter gets a cue card, and I write from those cue cards, which is pretty hard sometimes. I write pretty small and messily, but that's probably why I'm investing in computer glasses now.
You know, I just bought a pair of those the other day. They'll be in tomorrow. I'm going to see if they help. So I'm curious then, if you write the snowflake method, which is kind of plotting and planning, but not really, because it's kind of a hybrid between pantsing and plotting. When you write out those chapters on those cue cards, do you write the entire story from beginning to end on those cue cards before you start drafting?
I do it from beginning to end, but I also have. I probably should have mentioned this before, but one of the major things that I sketch out before the cue cards are the end, especially like the battle or like the climax or whatever. That's the first thing that I decide on, and everything's leading up to that. And then I'll do the midpoint and the setup and what some people call the first doorway and the second doorway. And that's really what I'm writing from. So that would probably be, if you're using the snowflake method as a reference, it would probably go blurb, plot points, chapter outline, and then the book.
How long does it take to usually go through and write out all that stuff from concept to cue card to actual drafting?
Few days. And
really?
Usually,
wow.
Yeah, and it helps for me to sort of spread it over a few days, just because I find, you go to sleep and your mind is sort of turning these things over, and you wake up with answers, or you're like hitting the gym or shoveling the driveway, which we do a lot of here in Newfoundland, Canada. And something random occurs to you that you've been trying to, a nut you've been trying to crack.
Does that extra half an hour help with that planning process? If you guys don't know, I learned something new today that I didn't know. No, it was from Scott. Because we're doing the pre-show, we're doing the mic check, and we're talking about what time he's going to come on, and I'm like, yeah, it's about 4.5 hours from now. And at that time, it was like 3:30, I think we were talking. And so we both had to get a calculator out and figure out, right? He goes, oh, that's about 10:30. And I stopped and I was like, no, because it's 8. It's 8 hour time. So what is that to you? And he goes, oh, it's 10:30. And I'm like, no, it's 8. It's not. I'm going to pull out an English reference here. It's not 9:30 or 7:30. It's 8. And he goes, no, we have an extra half an hour thrown in there, which I had no idea Newfoundland had a half an hour time zone.
It's basically a parallel.
So does that mean you have a 23.5-hour day or a 24.5-hour day?
It's all just shifted a half hour. I think they just did it to screw with us.
Interesting.
Just makes time zone math that much more a pain in the butt.
Who needs time zones? Who needs them?
So when everybody else is at like 12 midnight, like getting ready to change over the day, you guys are like either half an hour before or half an hour after, but you guys are already there.
Yeah, we hit New Year's first, incidentally.
But only by half an hour, so you don't even get a whole hour to celebrate before the next guy goes.
Really time to finish your beer.
So after you've done the cue cards, does that lead straight into just chapter 1, line 1, and then you just go from there, or how do you go about like creating it after? I tell you, I'm a huge plotter, as everybody hates to hear me say, and I told Steve on the phone today that I'm getting ready to cut like 5,000-6,000 words out of Edge of Valor and completely change the way the ending is, because I found a plot hole while I was writing today. And I was writing today on like some kind of coffee jitter. I'm not even sure what happened, but my eyes were like doing this and my hands were like shaking, and I was like, I couldn't concentrate, but I was like, I've got a plot hole, and I'm like doing all this, and I figured it out. So for me, that was a kind of a big deal, because I should have already seen that plot hole and I didn't. So how do you go about all that drafting process, and do you have hiccups like that where you've got to go back and fix later?
I do. I definitely have plot holes. Somehow I'm usually always able to kind of either science or hand wave or just like think my way out of it. I've never had to go back and like overhaul something. Chiefly, it's probably just laziness. But I'm like, I'm not rewriting this. I'm gonna sit down and think about this until I can go back and like change 1 or 2 things and just move forward. But in terms of how I go from the cue cards to the actual chapters, usually on each one of these things and in every chapter, I have one main focus. Like really every chapter can be boiled down to one action that moves the plot forward, or one outcome, or one reversal or twist that's sort of kicking the reader into the next chapter and making them want to read more. In terms of my process and how I transition from that, with the thing I'm working on now especially, I've left a lot of my research to do on the fly as I write, and that's resulted in a slightly slower process, and something very much like writer's block happens to me every like 500 words or so. But I think, and obviously it's too early to tell, but I think it's resulting in a more detailed, authentic world.
See, I kind of agree with that. Like I used to world build a lot prior to, but I found a lot of it comes easier as you draft and figure out what you actually need for the story. Yeah. Then you can world build into the story without. I mean, obviously, you need to have like a baseline, like a like for instance, for you have the cyberverse or whatever, the subverse, the other reality. So you had to have that beforehand, but all the little specific things that go along with that, you can kind of figure out as you go.
Yeah, exactly. It's not great for getting into flow state to be stopping every 500 words and researching something. I'm hoping the research will get less and less as I advance through the book and sort of get more used to my own world. But I think this is my favorite way to write. I do think I like to sort of take it slow and not exactly obsess over the prose, but make sure it stays true to that character's tone and really make it feel like, you know, you're in his head.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of people forget sometimes that, you know, with all that the time is one of the ingredients in this little creative stew that we're all trying to mix up, you know, and and I said something like this last show too, but in this current age of produce super fast, get it out there, you know, I think a lot of folks might be overlooking the value of slowing down a little bit and like you said, making sure it's right, you know, making sure you're not sliding over plot holes and that the character's tone doesn't change from one paragraph to the next and that kind of thing. I think a lot of people are so caught up in the high production idea that they sort of forget about the not necessarily quality, but the consistency of the elements of the story because they're in such a hurry.
Absolutely.
I think quality. I think quality was a fair word to use, though. I mean, I think we've all read those books where you get to a certain point and you go, well, they just wanted to get past this scene.
Yeah. Yeah.
I even spoke to an author the other day where he read me a review, and the review said the book started out great, and then 3/4 into it, it just felt like the author wanted to finish the book. And the author told me he's absolutely right. That's exactly what happened.
Yeah, you got to be careful with stuff like that. People will know, you know.
Yeah.
And I think it's better to, because like right now, I'll be honest with you, I'm kind of in that exact position with my current work in progress. I've been struggling with it for months now because I just, for some reason, I'm having a hard time. I just don't want to, but I've been making myself go through it, but I'm writing a lot slower because I'm making sure that none of my own attitude is coming through in the prose. You know,
what's the problem with erotica though, Chuck?
Well, it's the Bigfoot aspect of it. All those really hairy phalluses and things. It's just hard to write that stuff. Hey, you went there first, buddy. That's all I'm saying. But you see my point. You know, you have, I think when you get to a point where you just want to be done, you can't give into the temptation of rushing through it because you're going to end up screwing the reader. And that's the last thing you want to do as a storyteller.
That's what she said.
No big hairy penis jokes.
That's what she said.
First of all, I'm going to be the first writer in 2019 to do dinosaur erotica pop-up books. They are
Chuck
going
Tingle
to
already got it. Chuck Tingle did it.
No, it's a pop-up book. It's a pop-up book.
Everything Chuck Tingle writes is a pop-up book.
See, you can either have claws or I don't know.
Sorry,
this new series that I'd like to get you on, John L. Munko, Scratch and Sniff erotica. Yes,
that's just messed up.
I want to
growing markets.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Definitely emerging markets.
Markets. I can see that in grocery stores.
Oh, yeah. So I'm curious about this series. This trilogy is, you say, it's got a hard stop, and you could go back and do 3 more to do another trilogy if you want. And now you're working on something new. This something new. Is this what you're working on with Joshua James?
Well, I guess there are 2 something's new. So the thing with Josh is in my X and Prophecies universe, and the thing that I'm doing solo is a totally new universe. So inspired by things like StarCraft and EVE Online, it's one of these stories where humanity has expanded far, far away from, you know, the solar system. And in my story, the premise is going to be they head through a wormhole. At the moment, well, they've already headed through there, and they're sort of industrializing it and extracting its unusually high resource levels. And at the very moment an alien species attacks, the wormhole to Earth slams shut. And now there's all these corporations vying for supremacy in this star cluster, which they're exploiting.
So I love EVE Online. Like I played that game pretty religiously for a couple of years, and I don't know that there's a couple EVE Online books that have come out that are okay. They're not great. They're okay. But I love the premise. So that That sounds really cool.
I'm pretty pumped to write it. I could see it going like 10, 15 books, depending.
And is it mill sci-fi, or is it space opera, kind of a 12 genre mashup like After the Galaxy?
It's pretty straight mill sci-fi, but it is like a private military company. But it's the way it's structured is very much after, say, the U.S. Navy.
Okay. Excellent. And so I'd like to get you and Josh to talk, get on the shoot to talk about the collaboration. Just because I love talking about collaborations and looking at like really how authors are going about it and working together. I think that's freaking awesome. Yeah,
it's been super fun so far. We're in the very early stages, but I think we're both pretty excited to get going on it.
One of the things that I didn't see when I was looking through your books was, and maybe it's just this series, I need to go look at the other ones, but for audio, are you doing audio for the After the Galaxy series?
Yep, it's not up yet, but my narrator, Mark Boyette, is getting in the booth next week. Yeah, next week. And we're doing them pretty rapid fire, so a couple weeks after that, he's getting in with book 2, and a couple weeks later, book 3 is happening.
So you don't do the simultaneous releases, but do you do, like, when you do your audio books, do you do them as like batches with the narrator?
Not usually. This is the first time I've done them so close together. Typically, my audio is lagged a fair bit behind ebook and print, but I guess they're happening. This is probably the closest together that they've happened.
Do you see, Steve and I have had a lot of conversations about this topic, and I like to look at those, the print and ebook market and the audio market as kind of two separate deals. Mm-hmm. In your experience with your books, how do you look at it? Like, because I think you can hit your ebook market and your print market with your ebook, but then the audio is something completely different. Like, it's a completely different monster, a completely different market to tap.
And just for the sake of it, I disagree. That's why we have those discussions.
That's why I'm asking Scott. So, I was asking Scott.
You is to pick your side. Choose this day whom you will serve.
All right, I'm going to do it. I'm going to definitively pick a side. Everything I've seen in terms of my own sales and my own audiobooks would suggest that they're two totally different independent markets.
No, hold on. Sit down, Josh, because I'm going to argue. I have to.
I'll do it.
You can't argue. It's 2 against 1.
I can. Scott literally just said he has never released simultaneously with audio and ebook, and I have.
But it's 2 markets. That's what we say. That's my argument.
Do you know how many sales I get on WhisperSync because my books are available at the same time? People buy the ebook and instantly click yes for $1.99, yes for $7.49. I'll take the audiobook. It's not a completely different market. It's a completely different market if you pre-release your ebook and then a year later release your audiobook. Sure, it's a different market, but if it's simultaneous, it's the same product.
I think if you do a poll.
Only if you dance on it.
I do. Okay, so I get the WhisperSync argument. But even with that reduced price, are you still getting the full? Are you losing out on money by doing that $179?
I'm not losing out on anything because I'm still getting a ton of people buying the credits, right? It's the people that buy ebook first. So like the audiobook market, if you want to argue the difference between there's 2 different markets, the audiobook market is buying with credits. 95% of them are buying 1 book a month with credits, right? Mm-hmm. But then you get all these other people that are buying the ebook and going, I can't pass up $1.99. I can't pass up $7.49 to add the audiobook. And even if they never read it or listen to it, like, they're still purchasing it because there's so many people that get that, like, You ever go to a grocery store and like you can't help but buy that thing that's right there at the cash register?
Yeah, because it's that
impulse buyers. That's Scott Moon. Scott told me like he can't buy an ebook and not click the little checkbox to get the audiobook as well.
I'm a sucker for it too.
Right? So if you simultaneously release, you're getting all the impulse buyers plus the people that are already going to buy it with their credit.
So you know what you need to do is make that little click like $1 million, and then so you buy like a $2.99 ebook and you just click here to add the audiobook for $1 million, and those people that don't look like click the ebook for $1 million, and then bam, you're $1 million.
The craziest thing is like we don't have any control over how much they are. Like mine went from being $7.50 extra down to now they're all $1.99 extra. And I've even asked Audible, and Audible's like, we don't know. I'm like, what do you mean you don't know? Who does it? Like some dude in his mom's basement is figuring out the price of the Whisper Sync edition.
So JR actually has a good question about what percentage are you making off that click to buy?
There's a few ways that I look at this. I don't care how much I'm making on the royalty, because that, first of all, I'm going to make whatever percentage off of that is going to be the same as if I sold a 99-cent book anyway. I'm at least going to make the 35-cent sale. Chances are those people are not going to be buying it on credit, and that $1.99 sale still acts as a sale toward my bonuses, my history with audio, so that like I'm constantly moving in the rankings.
Right.
Like I'll take 1,000 like 35-cent sales if it's going to put me in a higher ranking and get me other sales. Absolutely. I'll give away books if that's what it takes. I need to be visible.
No, that makes sense. Yeah, absolutely. Definitely.
Yeah, I tried to get Audible to reduce my Whisper Sync to $1.99 for all my book ones, but they wouldn't go for it.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know how they figure it out, man. I have no idea how they figure it out.
Well, go ahead, Chuck.
Oh no, I was just
hold on. We got to answer JR
in my head, and numbers make me dizzy, and I don't know. They just I see where Steve's coming from as far when you look at it from that impulse buy perspective. I get what he's saying about the simultaneous releases tying the markets together, but by that same token, I'm confused by the fact that nobody knows how the hell these prices are being set. I mean,
we've asked Audible Studios several questions that, and maybe I hate, listen, Audible Studios, if you ever listen to this, I love you so much. I'm not, but I'm so confused. I'm so confused about so much of the process. Like I wanted to get the books in the library, and they're like, well, we don't handle that. Brilliance Audio handles that. And we've been trying to figure out, like Audible told me, we've been trying to figure out how to get them to like let us choose which ones go into the library market. And I'm like, you produced it. It's yours.
Yeah.
I don't understand. JR, like if you're not doing ACX, I mean, Scott does ACX, right? So he's putting his own upfront money into the production. I get paid by my publisher to do it. And so like for me, I'm not spending a dime on it. So every sale that I make is like gold. And honestly, for Scott, like he sells so well, and I don't mean to put you on the spot there, but Scott sells so well that like I know he's gonna be totally fine giving up his book for $1.80 or $1.99 and then his royalty to push his book forward to the Audible market, because we're all looking for the Audible market. People that listen to Audible don't go to Amazon to buy their Audibles. Period.
Right.
They go to audible.com.
Yep.
So we're getting extra sales every time somebody buys our audiobook through Amazon. It's free money. Doesn't matter if it's 35 cents or $2.08. It's free money. Well, and guys, that's 99-cent books. Like, come on, why not?
Well, and then it rolls also to the people that are looking to get a cheap audiobook. If like they don't have a credit ready, but they have a book that comes out, and they are like, I really want to listen to this audiobook, but I don't have a credit ready, and I don't want to spend the $30. They can go and buy the ebook for $2.99 and then buy the audio. Even if the audio is $4, $5, $6.99, they're still saving money because they don't have to spend the $14, $15, $16.99 on Audible. So you get that $2 or whatever it is for the audiobook purchase. But then when the second one comes out, then that's when they're going to spend the credit on the next book if they like that first one, or they're going to buy it at the full price. And so you're going to see that money come back. It's not like when you put money into an ad. I listened to Michael Cooper talk at the 20 Books to Vegas this last conference, and he was talking about cost per clicks and getting people to pay for an ad. And he was saying, even if he spends $9 to sell a 99-cent book, he's still making money because of read through the series.
Mm-hmm.
So he's spending $9 to get people to buy a 99-cent book to make $15 on the back end because people read through a series. And so it's kind of almost the same thing like you're talking about, Steve, where they just click that button and make that $1.99 purchase on an audiobook. But then when they go to their audio app and they're like, what am I going to listen to next? They see that book and then they follow it through to Audible to buy the next one. And they're like, oh, I'll get the next one. Click. So,
or it even makes them go to the next book in series on ebook and do the exact same thing. And again, I'll give up those sales because I never would have had them to begin with. And so like two in the hand is worth, or one in the hand is worth two in the bush, or, you know, whatever that idea is. There's a, whatever, man. There's a really cool tool, but Chuck's going to talk. Chuck, go ahead.
Sorry. I was just, what you were just saying there about going from audio to ebook and stuff. I actually, the serialization of my book Awakened started like a couple of weeks ago. And I've actually seen an increase in sales of that ebook in the 2 or 3 weeks since that started. And it makes me wonder if people haven't heard episodes of the pod. I mean, it's not huge, but it definitely is a noticeable rise. And it makes me wonder if people haven't heard like the first 3 or 4 chapters on that podcast and decided they didn't want to wait for the rest of it and went and got the ebook. I don't know. I mean, there's no way to track that data. So I just, but that kind of ties into what Steve's saying about the markets being linked together, and at least in some sort of tangential way.
I mean, I know a lot of people that go back and forth with reading, and they listen on the way to work and they read at night and they use WhisperSync. I don't. I don't do it, but there is a really cool tool, and I'll stop talking with this because Scott's actually our guest. But there is a really cool tool that Amazon has, and I'm sorry, I don't remember what it is, but maybe we could find it and throw it in the show notes. You can actually search your Kindle library through Amazon for books that have audible narration add-ons. So like it'll go through everything you've ever bought and then tell you how you can just click a checkbox and add the audio for the $1.99, $2.99, or $7.49, whatever it is. And so every now and then I'll go through all the books that I've gotten for free or for 99 cents with like BookBarb and all of those things. And I'll just every now and then go through that tool and see if any of those have audible narration add-ons. And, you know, so that saves money and time as well. So it's an option.
I'm just Googling that on Google right now because I'm curious.
Yeah, super cool tool, man. Most audiobooks are $7.49.
I wonder if our guest knows anything about that tool.
Oh, hi, Scott.
Sounds great.
Hope you're enjoying the show, Scott.
On the subject of audiobooks, it's pretty much all I do for reading now. Mostly goes by eye strain, which I mentioned earlier. But yeah, 10 hours.
I'm the same way though. I can't read fiction for pleasure while I'm writing fiction. So pretty much all my fiction over the last few years has come in the form of audio.
I think that's all of us on this show, right? Pretty much.
Yep.
Because I mean, I start trying to read a book and I just start picking it apart. I can't just let myself get lost in it. The inner editor kicks in, but I don't do that with audio. So
yeah, it's weird. It's a different experience.
It very much is. I think it's got a lot to do with the performance of the narrator. Because that's one thing I've noticed. Even my books, when I listen to somebody else read them, and I hear the differences they put in the performance from what I heard in my head when I was writing it, and it's like it's a completely different experience for me. In fact, there's a character Vors in my space opera series that I've actually adjusted the way I write him because I like what the narrator did with him.
Yeah,
You know, I told the narrator I think Vors is his spirit animal because he just like got it and he just made it work. You know, and I love watching what these guys can do with our work. I think it's great.
Yeah, and audiobooks, the narrators are probably more important than us, the authors.
Oh, agreed, 100%.
Yeah. I wouldn't dispute that. I really wouldn't.
You find it, Josh?
I got to give them something decent to work with.
No, I was gonna say because I mean you have really good narrators, and you have narrators that are not so that good, and it does affect. I mean, you look at the reviews. I did not like this book because of the way the narrator read it.
Right.
And so the narrator that you choose and how they read your book could very well affect the sale or the potential reader of that book just because of the way somebody read it.
Well, yeah, and I think it comes down to the difference between reading and performing. Because when I had one of my books up for open auditions on ACX, I mean, the bulk of the auditions I got was somebody and this happened, and this happened, and this happened. And there was no inflection, you know, that you could tell they didn't put any work into figuring out the characters and how they would sound. And, you know, and again, that's the difference between, it's like having somebody who just reads the news read your book as opposed to an actor reading your book.
Yeah.
You know, the performance versus just the conveyance of information.
Oh yeah, that's for sure.
Difference.
So Scott, since this episode's about you, we might as well ask you a couple questions before we leave. What this new series that you have coming out, when do you think we can expect that?
I'm aiming for April. May be more likely, but I'm thinking the first 3 books, and I'll probably do what I call the Netflix binge model again and drop 3 books simultaneously. The readers seem to like it. You know, they can move directly to book 2 and then to book 3. So I'm going to try that again.
Somebody else does that. Who else does that?
Isaac
another
Cook.
Author. Isaac Cook does that. Yes.
Yeah.
Do you find that model where you drop 3 at one time, because like Ben Hale does like 6 months of releases, but then doesn't do 6 months. Like he writes for 6 months and then releases for 6 months, and it kind of like flip flops. Is that kind of the same thing here where you drop 3 and then you're quiet for 3 or 4 or 5 months while you write the next ones and you drop 3 more? Or how does that work?
Probably at least 4 months I'll be quiet between trilogy drops. But that said, I mean, there's always box set releases and audiobook releases, and now, you know, me and Josh are co-authoring something, so I'm hoping that I can fill in the gaps during those 4 months with other stuff. Sort of please the Amazon algorithm gods.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Hey, I threw the link in the chat for Matchmaker. If you want to pull that, Josh, but if you guys want to just go to it, it's there in the chat. And Scott, I have a question. Do you have any analysis or data or anything like that regarding the benefits of kind of dropping them all at once? And have you seen a positive effect on your side, or is that just another method that kind of works the same?
Well, I have a pretty limited data set. I mean, I've only done it once. What I can say about it is that I like that I launch only a third as much as I was launching before.
Right.
So a lot less time is spent on marketing. It also makes sense to me that read through would probably be better, because if I'm waiting, 2 or 3 months in between releases, a lot of readers are probably forgetting about me, especially given all the great books that are hitting the market, weekly.
Did you do it with After the Galaxy?
Yep.
Oh, okay,
yeah,
cool.
I did day 1, 2, 3. Yeah. So, I mean, it's hard to split test because you need to create like a parallel universe and do it both ways.
Right.
But my theory is I'm probably getting a higher read through than I would have gotten otherwise.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, the only thing that I would ever think about, because Rhett and I have talked about doing that, and the only thought we've had is like, I feel like maybe the tail might be shorter, because I don't know. I mean, again, I get what you're saying, because like it's just the difference between 1 launch or 3 launches, and maybe a big spike and then a fall off or whatever. But I would just be curious, like what the sales tail is on that versus. I mean, again, you already said it. We can't really do the side by side properly, but
I think I'm not too worried about the tail, just because, especially if you're writing a longer series, and that is going to be my focus going forward. Writing books that are at least, or sorry, writing series that are at least 6 books long. So that way, like Chuck, I think, was saying, like Michael Cooper was saying in Vegas, you know, you can spend a lot of money on book 1 to promote it, but you're making money on the read through. So I think you're safer that way, especially in a longer series. You can do multiple trilogy drops all at once, and then at one point box it up, like I said. So I think you can still keep the series alive, but I could see, you know, a 1-to-1 comparison if you did books 1, 2, 3 spaced out and all 3 books all together. I could see you making your money all up front on the second model.
Yeah, be interesting. I'm interested to see. You know, we've even done this one here. We did like every book 3 weeks out or 4 weeks out or whatever it is, and then books 4, 5, and 6, we're gonna have 2 to 3 months in between each book. And so I'm curious to see even how that pans out in the end.
I mean, there's an advantage to that too, because that way each launch can be an excuse to promote book 1 and get new readers.
Right, exactly. Well, and book 3 is 180,000 words, so like nobody's going to finish that in 3 weeks and be ready for the next book, or not a lot of people, I should say.
Right, and who knows? It may work better for shorter books.
Yeah. So many questions, man. So many questions to try to figure it all out.
Oh yeah, and everything's changing, so that's what makes this fun.
Yep.
John Monk asks, do you drop all 3 like on the same day, or do you stagger it over a month or a time period? You just drop them all when you do the trilogies?
I staggered it over 3 days.
Okay.
So day 1, 2, 3, book 1, 2, 3.
Interesting. And Steve, I heard you say something about Matchmaker, but I don't see a.
I dropped just a short link. I went and like bit.ly'd it just so it wasn't like this ridiculously long link.
It didn't come through in the chat. Just send it to me.
I mean, I see it in the chat. There it is. There it is again in the chat. But I'll throw it into our company chat.
Okay. Yeah, I don't see it.
I'm pretty sure only Josh can put one up that everybody can see.
Oh, that might be okay. I didn't realize that. Yeah, that would make sense just to cut spamming down.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, Scott, thank you so much, man, for coming and hanging out with us tonight. It's always a blast to have you on and talk books and writing with you, dude.
Oh, thanks for having me, guys. Likewise, always awesome.
Good talking with you, man.
Good talking to you, Scott.
I'm going to try to hang on to the live chat here for a second while Steve sends me that link, but I'm very interested to know.
I did send it through the company chat. Is it not going through? Is there something wrong with something and I'm just not following?
Did you do the Facebook chat or the Slack?
Oh, Facebook. Sorry.
Yeah. Nope. Didn't come through on Facebook.
I don't see it either.
I'll try again. Man, I don't know what's wrong.
Everybody that hung out with us in the live chat tonight, thank you guys for coming and hanging out with us. It was there was an exceptionally a high amount of shenanigans going on in the chat tonight, and so
a lot of Will Wheaton hate coming out in the pod.
That's crazy, man. I think he's a great narrator, phenomenal narrator. But I don't care about Star Wars, so you know. I mean, dang it, Star Trek, dang it,
Star Trek.
I've had some whiskey. Just leave me alone.
So this link is really cool. I just clicked on it accidentally, and it brought up every single book that I can get an audio deal for. So that's pretty cool. So here it is in the live chat. I'll definitely put it in the show notes.
Holy crap!
Oh, don't do that! Don't do that! Don't do that! That's not what I wanted.
That is pretty neat.
If you want to thank me, I do take. I'll put my my address in the chat there. You can send me all kinds of
send him nothing.
Steve,
send him nothing.
Thanks, man.
There it is. You send me a thanks.
You send me all your stuff. Okay, there it is in the live chat. It's amazon.com/hz/audible/matchmaker.
Oh, it's easy.
It'll be It'll be in the show notes and it's in the live chat right now. Good times. I do want to let everybody know KSM International is kicking off here shortly. John and Ralph have been in really epic discussions about what they're going to do with the show, and it really sounds like it's going to be cool. The shared universe that we're putting together is coming along pretty nicely, and hopefully we'll have some updates on that here in the next couple of weeks. I think we're going to open it up to short stories on a limited basis on limited settings, and so we can kind of test the idea before going, okay, just do what the hell you want. But I think that's going to be really cool. I just finished the preliminary formatting for the ebook for Kingdoms of Iron and Stone. I'm making some corrections tomorrow and Wednesday, and then I will be sending it to the authors by Saturday morning. All the authors should have their own copy of the ebook for Kingdoms of Iron and Stone, and then we're probably going to launch the following Saturday after that, and I have no idea what day that is because I have no calendar in front of me. But we have Kacey Ezell and Chris Kennedy coming up next week, and guys, we're like packed solid through like April.
Nice.
Phenomenal.
Yeah.
We got so many guests lined up, it's insane. We've got a lot of good content coming up. Hell, I've even got people scheduled out in May. So it's going to be a really good season. It's going to be a really good year. And Scott, thanks again, man, for coming on and hanging out with us. Always a blast.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Hey, final word, Fallschirmjager.
That's right, Fallschirmjager.
Fallschirmjager.
Oh, and don't forget the Writer's Journey on Thursdays. Lauren and Kayleen are doing a phenomenal job. And this Thursday, they're having Clark Chamberlain on the show. They're going to talk about how to plot a novel. Lauren's got a great series of.
Clark's coming on.
Yeah, Clark's coming on, and then Steve's going to do it. See, she's got this little like yin and yang thing going on for the next couple weeks because she's got Clark coming on to talk about plotting, and then Steve coming on to talk about pantsing.
I'll be half naked for that too. Leave my pants in the other.
We got to get somebody who like is right in the middle.
Right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete Steve's episode right after they're done, and then we're just going to leave Clark's episode up there.
Sweet.
So everybody that hang out with us in the live chat tonight, thank you guys so much for coming out, hanging out with us, and supporting us. It's always fun to see the live chat shenanigans. If you're not watching live, you're wrong as always. Make sure you come back next week. We're going to hang out every Monday night this year, and it's going to be a phenomenal time. We're going to talk about some reading. We're going to talk about some writing, and, of course, everything in between right here on Keystroke Medium. You guys have a fantastic Monday.
See you guys.
Pop-up porn.